On behalf of the Foster City Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2015 Foster City City Council Candidates Forum. My name is Walter Russo, and I'm on the board of directors of the Foster City Chamber of Commerce. Tonight's event is hosted by Crown Plaza. Solomon, I saw you in the crowd. Where's Solomon's eye? Solomon, thank you very much. I have the privilege of introducing tonight's moderator, and that's Mark Simon. Mark is Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for Samtrans, where he's worked since 2004. Prior to working at Samtrans, he was a political reporter for Bay Area newspapers for over 30 years. Mark told me he started very young. He has covered and written about political campaigns at every level, local, state, and national, including 6 presidential campaigns and 6 national political conventions. For 11 years, he was at the San Francisco Chronicle as a columnist and political reporter and was twice named Chronicle Columnist of the Year. He graduated with honors and distinction from San Jose State University, go Spartans, with a BA in journalism. He lives in Redwood City and is married with 2 sons and 2 granddaughters. And the conversation that I want to have with Mark after this event, and you may want to have it too, is Mark was covering the 1989 World Series. He was seated in the front row of the upper deck at Candlestick Park when the Loma Prieta earthquake struck. Now that's a story I want to hear about. Mark?
Thank you, Walter. Good evening. All I know is that for weeks afterwards, if anybody walked by me with a heavy tread, I sort of held on tight, thought the ground was still shaking. Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to the Crown Plaza for this event. And thank you for coming. What a terrific turnout. I did this 4 years ago, and we had about half as many people. So either there's a whole new wave of civic interest or there's some problems in Foster City that everybody can't get over. We have 4 candidates running for 2 seats. Incumbent Steve Akamoto decided not to seek re-election. Steve, you're here, aren't you? Thank you for your service, Steve. Good to see you. The candidates are seated in a row. They drew lots, so they'll do an opening statement based on the order, and I'll introduce them in that order. I'm going to introduce them all, and then they'll each have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. I want to say this is a forum, not a debate. I love those League of Women Voters. I love them, but when they turn to somebody and say, okay, traffic, you have a minute, that doesn't seem practical to me. So I'm going to let you go, 2 minutes is a good enough time for a thoughtful answer. If I think you're going too long, I'll stop you. But the idea is for you to really get a chance to be thoughtful about your answers. And I'd encourage you to speak to each other. If you hear something you want to react to, you want to comment on, I want this to be a discussion more than a debate. And if my job is to make sure everybody's treated fairly. And I'll be vigilant about that. So I want to start by introducing to my immediate left, Sam Hindi, small business owner, has 3 children in local schools, Vice Chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee, Chair of the Board of Directors of the Foster City Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome Sam. Catherine Mahanpour is an attorney. She has a law degree from Golden Gate University. She's president and principal at AMCM Consulting, a firm that specializes in providing services to businesses, if I read your website correctly. She volunteers as an advocate for foster children. Please welcome Catherine. Patrick Sullivan is a business owner, educator, is owner of Liberty Realty, has served on the Parks and Rec Commission and the San Mateo County Commission on Disabilities. Please welcome Patrick. And then incumbent Herb Perez is seeking his 2nd term on the council, former chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, owns a martial arts business, has a law degree from Rutgers, and is an Olympic gold medalist. Please welcome Herb. So we will start with the opening statements. Sam, you drew number 1, so you go first.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Sam Hindi, and I want to tell you a little bit about my journey. My journey started 32 years ago when I immigrated to the United States in pursuit of my education and the American dream. When I immigrated to the States, I only had $1,000 in my pocket. I attended college during the day, and I had to work in the evening to support myself. 5 years later, I started a career business from my 1-bedroom apartment, and I developed it into a multi-million-dollar company. I am a father, a husband, and a local business owner. My wife and I have 3 children attending schools in the San Mateo Foster City School District. I hold numerous volunteer and leadership roles in the community, including Vice Chair of the Foster City Parks and Recreation Committee, Team Leader for the Community Emergency Response Team CERT, and Chair of the Board of Directors of the Foster City Chamber of Commerce. I am committed to enhancing the quality of life in our community. Today, we have a great opportunity to create a new vision and adopt a long-term strategy that will protect and maintain the quality of life we have all come to enjoy. We can build a sustainable future by promoting and growing the economic and business resources in our city. I will promise you, if I get on the council, I will do my best. I am committed to my integrity and my goodwill are the principles that guide me. On the council, I will use my experience to develop policies that are geared towards innovative solutions for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Mahan.
Hello. Everybody's wondering who I am. I've been in the Bay Area for about 24 years, and I've been in Foster City for a little bit over 3 years. I originally am from Maine, and my husband and I met in a college back in Maine over 30 years ago, and we've been married for over 31 years. So I love Foster City. My first job when I came out here actually was in San Mateo, right over across the highway from 92. And at that time I thought, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to live in this area? And I just loved it from day one. So it became a bit of a goal of mine to move to Foster City. I used to sit out in the park over there and by the lagoon, and it was just a beautiful area. So it took us several years. We put bids on 7 houses, but we finally found one that is ours now. And so we just love it here. And I feel that what I bring to the table is my skills are well suited to meeting the challenges that we're facing in Foster City because of the population growth, the repercussions of all of that. We're looking at traffic, we're looking at schools and our infrastructure. I bring a lot of common sense to the table, negotiation skills, and I also just really want to do well for the city, and I want to help you build the city that we want for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick.
Well, I'm going to start by dating myself a little bit. I was a newspaper carrier for a paper called the Call Bulletin. I don't know if anybody remembers the Call Bulletin. Somebody even wrote an article, so I was kind of delivering newspapers at a tender age of 9 or 10. I'm a business owner. I'm also a seasoned person running for city council, and I'm proud of it. I love Foster City. There's only one other person that I could say loved Foster City just as much, was former Mayor and former Councilman Ron Cox. And I greatly appreciate his service and his inspiration. There's pivotal times in your life that you make decisions. I lost my father 3 years ago. This was 1 year after the last time I ran. My father was a veteran, World War II. He served in Patton's Army. When I spent a lot of quality time with him, he said, Patrick, never give up. And that's kind of a quote from Winston Churchill. I'm here because I love Foster City. I know what the Park and Rec, I know the community development, I know what the budget's all about. I'm passionate about it. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I had one of those learning disabilities when I was growing up. Of course, they didn't categorize that. I asked questions. And I asked questions. And I always thought, for some reason, I didn't get it. But you know what? Over the course of my life, it helped me to make good decisions. I own my own company. It's a real estate company. I'm also proud to say I served on the San Mateo grand jury last year. I served 13 and 14. That was an eye-opening experience to find out what's happening in the county. Working with the county manager or the county manager and the assistant county manager, and working with all the departments to give me some more experience to bring back to Foster City. One of my claims to fame hobby is my dogs. I was on the Park and Rec for 10 years, as I mentioned. We helped establish the dog park in Foster City. We have issues before us in Foster City. Some of the issues were the same issues we talked about before. We're talking about the overcrowding of the schools. We're talking about the traffic mitigation. We're talking about the housing. We're talking about the environment. These are things that I think we have a grand opportunity with 3 new people on the council to step forward and really step up to the plate and make Foster City that planned city it was to begin with, and make Jack T. Foster proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Herb Perez.
Thank you. My name is Herb Perez, and I currently serve on your city council. 4 years ago, enough people in the city believed in me to elect me to the city council. For the past 4 years, I spent my time diligently dealing with policies and issues, and I've created, along with my colleagues, solutions that have affected our committee and our city in a very positive way. Today, I want to share some of those thoughts about the past, of what we've accomplished for the past 4 years. But more importantly, I want to share my vision for the future and what else we can accomplish. Because make no doubt, there are challenges before us, but we live in the most pristine city on the peninsula. This is the jewel of the peninsula. We enjoy a minimal crime rate. We have police and fire that respond within 2 minutes, sometimes at my house because my kids press the alarm by mistake. But more importantly, we have a great council and great leadership. This year, we chose a new city manager. And together, over the past 2 years, one of our fellow council members and I worked on an economic development plan that I look forward to, should I be reelected, that will help us develop the future for where we can go. 40 years ago, a man had a vision for our city. T. Jack Foster created that vision, and it's come to fruition. It is time for change. It's time to look for the next 20 to 30 to 40 years and to have leadership that can define that. Luckily, for the past 4 years, I've worked with tremendous colleagues that are now retiring or moving on. I look forward to working with 2 new people, along with the experience of the ones that are still there, to bring to this city the jewel of the peninsula and for it to maintain for a very long time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. For the first question, I'm going to start with Catherine, and then everybody will have a chance to respond. I think a general topic, the quality of life in Foster City, clearly is on a lot of people's minds. What is your assessment of the quality of life? What are the problems that are negatively affecting it? And which one would you tackle first, and how would you tackle it? Nice 2-minute question.
I may have to ask you to repeat a couple of parts of that, but I think the quality of life in Foster City right now is great. I think we do have challenges that we're facing because of the repercussions of our growth. We're facing traffic challenges. We're facing a housing issue. We're facing schools issue. We also have to be cognizant of how it's affecting our fire and police department and our emergency preparedness. So all of those run in tandem. I look at it as having tier 1 and tier 2 issues, and the tier 1 issues affect the tier 2. You've got the traffic. As you have more people, you have more traffic. As you have more traffic, you have emergency preparedness issues. As you have those issues, all of them affect and interrelate. So by correcting one, you may correct several problems. And I think that's how we need to look at it.
Thank you. Patrick, same question.
Well, first of all, I had a handout, so I'm going to kind of try to talk about the handout. And that's the first issue for me in Foster City, is making sure we pass that school bond. If we take a look at Foster City, what's happened in the last 6 years, we have an increase of 250 students per year. That's about almost 1,800 students that we are displaced. We need to get some classroom size. We need some expansion on the classroom. We need to continue to foster academic excellence, so to speak, in our schools. Schools are pivotal. I'm in real estate, and the first thing out of a buyer's mind, what are the test scores? So the quality of our life is really dependent on the schools too. And we have to bring that forward, get that off our plate, and make sure we come to a conclusion that is going to benefit. There is a time period here we've got to talk about. There's 3 years. There's a 3-year period of time that we're going to get some fines and stuff if we don't do it. I want to let you know I spoke to the stakeholders. I talked to the superintendent of schools, and she was very frank. They have their opinion of what they need to do in here in Foster City. They were talking about Chartered Square or the expansion on Bowditch. But I don't want to just focus on that. I also want to dovetail into the a couple of other items. The traffic situation. We realize that we only have two ways out, 3rd Avenue or Hillsdale Boulevard. So we're kind of landlocked. We got 101 and we got 280. Yeah, we can say, well, you know, they're causing the problems. Let's step outside of the box for a minute. Is there a plan? There is no plan. The only plan that we talk about is the El Camino connection plan, which connects El Camino to the train and everything else. It may be a time that Foster City could step up to the plate. We need to consider a metropolitan transit system. We are not solving the traffic problems by the way we're approaching it now. Third, is that a month?
We'll have a chance to get to other
Okay.
questions. I have a feeling we'll get to your whole list of issues.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
Herb.
So I'm going to go back to the question, which is, I think, quality of life and the challenges. The most significant challenge we have right now before us are making sure that our properties are safe. So we have a levee issue, and we don't truly we still have a safe community, but we have been placed in a flood zone mapped by FEMA. So over the past year, the council has looked at this, and we've created a plan because we remain in a seclusion zone, which means that for now, we have time to deal with this problem. On this Friday, the council, along with the senator and congresswomen and assembly members, are going to meet here to discuss, to work with our regulatory agency so we can fast forward that and we can be an example for the rest of the peninsula. So we're going to create a process by which we learn how to fund, get through the regulatory process so that we can raise the levies and raise them in such a way where we can protect the properties and stop you from having to pay additional flood insurance, which could cost you between $2,000 to $6,000 per year. In addition to that, we're going to tackle the wastewater. So we have a problem with our wastewater plant that we share with San Mateo. 25% of that is our cost, and it's a significant number. So I want you to pay attention to that, because you're going to get a Prop 218 notice about how we're going to fund that, and we're looking at that as well. The next most important problem, I believe, is the school district and the way that it nexuses with our city council. The very first thing that I did when I got on the council was call for a joint meeting with the school district, and they joined us, and they sat down and they came up with a process to address the overcrowding in our schools. Before you now is probably singularly the most important thing that's going to affect young families here and property values, and that's the school bond. So I went to the school district, and we asked for additional meetings to try to find a way to cooperate with them to help them pass that bond. So I want you to look at that, because that's the next thing that's going to affect our quality of life. But make no mistake about it. We have an excellent quality of life. Our parks are number one. We have 25 parks. We've completed our master plan. Our city remains strong. The challenges we have right now are with development, trying to get recalcitrant property owners like Charter Square and Edgewater Plaza to upgrade their properties so that we can enjoy them and they can fulfill the leasehold that they promised us.
We'll come back to that question shortly. Thank you. Sam.
Thank you, Mark. Well, no question about it. Foster City is a great place to live, work, and play. We really have a lot of good things going for us, but we also have challenges. To me, the most important challenge at this point are the schools. I have attended many school board meetings. I have also attended the Next Step meetings. I was part of the community outreach, and I listened, and I've been following the school issue for quite a time. My kids go to school. I have 3 kids. One of them has graduated from the San Mateo School District and now gone to CSM. And my 2 other kids, one is in Aragon and one is in Bowditch. I know what it means for us as families and as parents to have good quality schools. But you know what? It's not just about the families who have kids. There's a connection between our schools, quality of our schools, and our property value. So it is important for all of us to make sure that our schools remain top-notch. Young families are moving into the city because of our quality of school. Our homes, the value doubled and not too long ago, in a very short period of time. So it is important for us to reach out to the school district and collaborate with them to find the viable solution for our school problem. Another issue that what Herb touched on, we have 2 major challenges coming up. The levee, that is very important to us. So is the wastewater treatment system. The importance of the levee is because we are designated now, or not designated, if we don't raise up the levee, FEMA will designate us as a flood zone. If that happens, the insurance on the homes will increase. Any home loan that has guaranteed by the federal government will increase probably by $1,000, $2,000 a year. We cannot afford not to bring our levy up to standard. It's something I attended actually the city council meeting when those preliminary hearings were taking place. I'm glad that the city council is taking the proper action for this. So I look forward to seeing and working on this levy issue along with the schools.
Thank you. Patrick, it's your turn to answer this question first.
Okay.
Steve Okamoto, in his announcement in the Daily Journal that he would not seek another term, said the principal reason he decided against running is that an unhealthy environment has been created on the council, which has caused a good many staff members to leave or find employment elsewhere. Our civic leaders should be setting good examples of responsible behavior. It is my opinion that some have not. The actions of those members, again, in my opinion, are, quote, an embarrassment to the city. He goes on to describe the behavior as shameful. It's critical at this time, I think, for the council to work together. What's your view on your ability to work with the other members of the council and to collaborate and make sure that this environment is, first of all, do you agree with his assessment of the environment? But secondly, what can you do to make it better?
Oh, okay, well, first of all, I'm proud that I ran against Steve Okamoto in the last election, and he also is endorsing me. I would say, first of all, I watched many of the council meetings at home, primarily because it was a little bit not very organized. It was a little unruly, so to speak. I've extended myself to talk to Gary Pollard, to talk to Herb, to talk to Charlie, to talk to Sam. Catherine and I haven't had the opportunity to do that. We discussed what we needed to do. We need proper council decorum. I think some things got carried away, and I'm confident that those things can be mitigated. All of the people have maybe different opinions. If you take a look at the extreme of the councils, you had Steve Okamoto on one side listening to this, and you had Art Giesel listening to it, and it was rather challenging for the way that they could work with Charlie and also work with Herb, but I think we can work through that. I'm confident. My background is mediation. I'm also done mediation for the Bar Association for over 10 years. So I'm a facilitator. I'm a leader. I want to work with people. Just because they have a different point of view doesn't mean that somehow we can't bring the council together. Gary, if he's going to be mayor coming up, he's really full support of having a proper decorum. I think we can overcome this. Yes, we were a little bit embarrassed, to say the least, and I think the individuals have thought about it, and they realize that a proper decorum is important. And I look for the strong leadership to working with Herb and Charlie and Gary. So that'd be my response.
Thank you. Herb, I think as the incumbent, you're sort of responsible for answering this question on behalf of the council and on behalf of yourself.
Oh, I wouldn't make that mistake. There are individuals every once in a while they go out and they speak on behalf. So I'm speaking as an individual, as a candidate. So what I can say is that we're passionate about this city. And I come from a land of politics. I sat in the room, I've sat on big boards with George Steinbrenner, and you couldn't find a bigger personality than George. And so the question became at that point wasn't whether George was a big personality, it was what was he saying? And so as I sat around the room and I tried to build consensus, we had great moments of success. So when people say dysfunctional, what that means to me is doesn't function, doesn't work. But let's go back a little bit and think about what we accomplished. Jim Hardy retired. It was his turn to retire, so that's a staff member that left. He wasn't fired, he retired. For 3 years, we worked carefully to groom Kevin Miller to be his successor. There was no infighting. Kevin was 5-0, tagged to lead us into the future. That's consensus. We gave Kevin the power to hire his assistants. We've hired 3 new hires. The only individual that left was an individual that left because he had a better opportunity and wasn't going to be the next city manager. That's called business. We've changed the culture of this city so that it performs. And so what I would ask you to think about is how have we performed? Do we disagree? We're going to disagree. That's called politics and democracy. The question is, how do we disagree? And what have we accomplished? Politics is not for everyone, and council service is not for everyone. But I would like to believe that the people that leave with the same decorum that they came with. as I would leave if I weren't reelected, as I intend to serve as I am reelected. What's more important is to take a good look at what we've accomplished. We've built consensus on every major item. We have new crossworks at the schools. We're dealing with our levy. We're dealing with our wastewater. We have prevented overdevelopment. I forwarded, along with my colleagues, a gatekeeper ordinance that protects you. It was fought by 2 council members. I fought diligently to get consensus on that issue. And because of that, every project that comes to Foster City first has to go through us, and we opine on it. So I can tell you what hasn't happened. I have not approved one single housing project. I have opposed every housing project. I have listened to your voices about the Marina, Charter Square, Edgewater Plaza, and Triton Point. So if that's dysfunction, I will accept that dysfunction. And as one of my fellow council members says, I don't look at us as 2 and 2. I look at us as 5. And not everyone's going to get along, but that's called democracy. At the end, you should get up, shake hands, and you should talk to your fellow council members. I'm proud to say that I talk to every single council member.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sam, your view on how the council's conducting itself?
Well, Mark, I have attended numerous meetings of City Council in the last few years, and I have watched and I listened. Has the council been functioning that way as a resident I would like it to function? The simple answer is no. We have a body of 5 that unfortunately was not, for whatever reason, I know that all 5 has a good intention why they ran for City Council. Because this is not an easy job, and it's not a paid job. So they all had the good intention of the city to run when they ran. But unfortunately, it came to a point to where it seems like some members of the City Council lost focus of why they are sitting on that council. And it became about, I hate to say it, but that's how I see it, and that's how a lot of residents see it. It became about personalities. Well, let me tell you, people of Foster City are tired of that. People of Foster City I talk to, they tell me, we need a council member that put the priority of Foster City resident on the list, on the top of the list. This is not about me or any members sitting here. This is about the good of the whole community. And we need to have all 5 working together. I have built relationship with all members in the community. This side of the issue, that side of the issue. I respect people no matter where they stand on the issue, and that's how this council should function. We agree to disagree, but there's a majority of 5. 3 people decide one way, the rest of the 5 have to follow them, and we move on to the business of Foster City.
Thank you. Catherine.
Well, I couldn't say it better, Sam. I totally agree with Sam. I think that the decorum needs to be more respectful of others' opinions, and we need to think more about the citizens and what the citizens want. The citizens vote us in. They're the people who count in this, as well as us. It's not we don't serve on the city council for our own glory. We serve at the people's wish, and so I do believe that. Now, I've worked with a lot of attorneys who have big egos, most of them, and they have their own way of going at things. But in the law office, we were always able to get together and work as a team, because that's what you have to have when you're making important decisions like that, as a team. So I've learned how to deal with a lot of different personalities and how to go about building that team and that collaborative way of working together. So I think that's what we need to bring to the new city council.
Thank you. It'll be your turn. Let's talk about the economic development plan. How critical is it? How well formulated is it? What's its vision for the future of Foster City? What needs to be done?
So, one of my top priorities when I was elected 4 years ago, and I was very grateful. I think it was, I can't remember who was mayor at the time. Actually, I think it was Mayor Kiesel. So he had done his first term as mayor. And I asked him, could I serve on the Economic Development Initiative, a task force? So we got together, 6 of the brightest minds we could find, And then two of the less brighter minds, myself and my council member, Charlie Berninsky. It's a joke. Charlie, don't hit me. For 2 years, we got up every morning, early in the morning, and we assembled this group, which includes city staff, assistant city manager, our community development director, Kevin Miller, our future city manager, and then Joanne Bohegan from the Chamber of Commerce, and Sally. She was on the SDEF committee, which is an environmental sustainability task force. And we painfully crafted a plan that was exquisite in detail, because we were concerned that the future of Foster City did not lie in development. In fact, we're developed. So what were going to be the economic engines to deal with the reality of where we were? The plan was brought to the council after we sat in a room all together, and this was much discussion. And if you thought the council meetings were contentious, this was vivid and live discussion, and it was in a private setting, so people would argue back and forth, and we'd walk out, and we came out with a consensus again, 8-0, to bring it to the council. It was brought to the council, and the council approved it. It was funded by the council, 5-0, only to have its funding pulled when it was time to enact. So I'm not a big fan of that. So Kevin Miller knows he had planned a park. And so I said, if I'm going to spend money on planning, I'm going to spend money on building. I don't spend money on planning. I don't plan for things that I'm not going to do. I'm not planning for a moonshot. Likelihood I'm going to get there is pretty slim, although some people want me to go to the moon. But I fully expected that plan to be realized. One of the key initiatives that I fully expect to happen, should I get reelected with your support, is that plan will be realized, because the architect of that plan is still with us. He's now our new city manager. He has tasked his assistant city manager. That is his first priority. He has given us a draft of a new one, because we can't survive without it. It deals with everything from housing to land use, to the shopping centers, to mixed use, to see what we need to do. It talked about virtually every aspect, including environmental sustainability. One of our council members said, why do we need to do this now? It's great, everything's fantastic. Well, that's exactly why you do it. I'm a business person. When my business is great, I strike while the iron is hot. I open a new location. I don't wait till I need money. I do it when I absolutely have the money to do it. We have the money. We have a $1.3 million reserve overage. We have the time and the money, and we must do it. Because if you plan for the future when the future is here, you're 2 days late and a step short. So the plan is here, and we're ready to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam.
Okay. Well, economic development plan. I was heavily involved in economic development plan. I've met with the mayor, vice mayor, and city manager on 3 occasions. We're trying to move that plan forward. It didn't happen. It has been shelved for the last 2 years. In my opinion, that is unfortunate for the city of Foster City. What that does, it is the vision and the starting point, if you will, to how we want to shape our future. Last 2 years, everything has been just being looked at as in vacuum, as individual project. If we had that plan moving forward, we would have a universal look at all these projects that you see come in front of City Council today. Why is the economic development strategic plan important? Because it does have the sustainability factor in it. It has, Foster City needs to be sustainable economically. It needs to be sustainable socially. It needs to be sustainable environmentally. All these things together, we could have a better future. Today, we are doing very well. Foster City has a balanced budget. It has a surplus. But this economic model that we have today is not sustainable in the long term. We need to do better than that. We need to have that economic strategic plan back on the table. Now it's been tabled not to be looked at. As a council member, that would be one of my top priorities.
Thank you. Catherine.
Well, I've looked at the economic development plan, and I support the plan, but my question is, should the city be funding these chamber activities? So I need to do a little bit more research and talk to some more people and see why the funding should be coming from the city and not from the chamber and the businesses that the chamber supports. If we have a $1.3 million overage, we might want to prioritize the expenditures and find some place where we can plug in some of these projects, because I do think that it's a good plan. I think the projects are worthwhile, but I'm just wondering about where the funding is coming from the city to the chamber.
Okay, I know Herb wants to react. We'll get to you in a second. Let Patrick go next, and then we'll.
The economic development plan, I think, from what I understand, they were trying to do a 40-year plan, and I think that we really need to look at a shorter plan. The immediate things is we got to realize 53% of the money that comes into the city of Foster City is from property taxes. If we realized 5 or 6 years ago, we were in one of those really deep recessions in this area, and we didn't have that money coming in. So before I forecast anything, I think we need to have a plan to make sure we continue to maintain that money. The economic development plan needs to be fostered about what Foster City is all about. We've built out. We've built out tremendously already. We need to make because of the build out, we need to go ahead and add another 464 or 484 houses. Where are we going to put those? We have to do that because the state has required that we do that. So we have to look really closely at where we're at. We have some major people, Gilead's, Visa. They bring in a lot of revenue to this city. But the economic development is only as good as those people that are there to bring in that revenue for us. We've got to look at a sound plan that doesn't necessarily take it out 40 years. We may look at it every 10 years.
Herb, you wanted to react to what Catherine said.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm going to have to apologize because I'm going to go back to the plan itself. And so it's important to remember that the plan is not funding the chamber, nor is the chamber funding the plan. The plan was funded by the city. So the city had a plan, and the plan would be funded by the city. The city then would find partners. One might be the chamber, one might be a consultant. In fact, we hired a retail consultant for $75,000, and that retail consultant went around and looked at the commercial centers. So the chamber wasn't funding the plan, nor were we funding the chamber or any individual on the chamber. So that's one of the common misnomers out there in the community. But the plan is about 400 pages, so you kind of get lost in it if you're reading it and you're not really detail-oriented to get into the plan itself. So when you look at the plan, what you will see is it deals with all the issues that you've raised. It deals with sustainability environmentally. It deals with economic sustainability. It deals with the fact that we're overdeveloped or underdeveloped, but we're developed. So what are we going to do moving forward to increase the property values, as Patrick says, so that your house, which went up 47% in Foster City, when everything else went down, we are in the top 4% of 47% increase in your house value. And that's because of our city council, not my city council, but our city council. So the economic development plan, funded by the city, not funded by the chamber, and the city wasn't going to fund the chamber.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add an additional comment on this or respond to Herb or have something else to add to this whole discussion?
Well, I would like to add something on that because I'm very familiar with that strategic plan. The city was not funding the chamber. The chamber was given tasks and certain initiatives that they need to do. And if they do those, they will be given the money for those specific tasks. It wasn't the city in the plan. It's not that the city will pay the chamber just for them being part of it. They were assigned specific tasks. They deliver on with numbers for each task, which could be, like Herb said, it could be any other consultant outside. But who is a better partner than the Chamber of Commerce, who has a connection and the conduit for the businesses to come into the city and work together for the betterment of Foster City? This is really about partnership between businesses, residents, and the city together. We are a group that all of us have the same interest, making sure that this city is economically vital and it progresses and maintains this quality of life that we all enjoy.
My only comment is this shouldn't have been public on the city council to embarrass the council or embarrass the chamber. This issue with economic stability is all important to us. but we need to work those issues through behind closed doors. I was totally embarrassed, to say the least, to find out how they treated the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if anybody had that opportunity to review it. That was a business matter, and that business matter did not need to be before the council. It needed to be behind closed doors. So I'm all for economic stability, but I'm also for proper decorum on the council, and it's really important.
I think I'd like you to elaborate a little bit, because for people who may not be completely familiar with what you're talking about, I think the idea of having meetings take place behind closed doors where public policy is being formed would make some people uncomfortable.
Well, let me kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Basically, what happened is there was some kind of agreement with the city and some kind of agreement with the chamber, whether it was in writing or whether it was verbal, that kind of went out of control. And as a result, when it went out of control, it became a circus, so to speak, with two council members towards the chamber. So we're not trying to talk about public policy here, Mark, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, Herb.
Well, and what Mr. Simon is talking about is correct. We have something called the Brown Act. And so while we can talk about many things, there are certain things we cannot talk about. We cannot talk about matters of contract of this significance with anything without public involvement, nor would I. Why wouldn't we bring this to the public for them to opine on? So the Brown Act would prevent, and with all due deference to Patrick, our ability to do so. Rest assured, for 2 years when we developed this plan, we had private conversations, and they were contentious, and they were democracy in action, and it was beautiful. It was fantastic to watch the passion of Steve Toller, Joanne Bohegan, and Charlie Berninsky. And I can tell you one thing, those three individuals in one room, passionate about something, that's like 3 lions with 1 piece of meat. But at the end of that, all 3 of them, with 5 others, came out with a cohesive plan. And I will bring you back to point number 1. The council voted yes, 5-0. The council funded it, 5-0. And then the council unfunded it, 3-2. And that's okay, because that's called democracy. But the question is, what do we do moving forward? We bring it back.
Thank you. So, Catherine, you sort of touched off this part of the discussion. Did you have anything to add?
Well, my idea of the job of the Chamber of Commerce is to work with the businesses and promote the businesses. So those parts of the plan, if that's a part of their job, why would the city give money to the chamber to work on those parts of the plans? Because I see that as a job of the chamber, and it's not our responsibility to fund those jobs. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Let me ask real quick. Would all 4 of you vote to fund the plan going forward? Quick show of hands. Who would vote for it?
Well,
No.
I mean, it's really not just fund the plan as it is, but this is a good starting point, the plan. I don't know what the 5 members will say, but at least we could start having the discussion. We start putting the foundation. Where do you want Foster City to go? What we have in today is absolutely no discussion, and that is not helpful to Foster City. So how would the plan be? I don't know. But I will definitely seek the advice of everybody. I will gather all the information needed. And based on that, I would vote yes or no, depending on what we have in front of us.
Can I just add one piece of clarity? Two
Take
seconds?
a seat, relax. Seriously, since you're responding to these folks here,
So
I'd rather you sit with
let me add some clarity. So if you read the preamble of the plan, what it says is to find partners. So the chamber, doing its job as a regular chamber, we're not funding the chamber's mixers and this thing. We're funding things that the chamber would do in addition to what they did do. So just like if you had a business, I own a small business. And in that small business, I do what I do. But if you come in and you want something above and beyond that business, there's a fee associated with that. Because it's extra workload. It's extra people. It's extra work and bodies. The chamber has, I think, 3 bodies. It has a CEO who functions as their CEO, their president. It has an assistant, admin, and then it has volunteers. So they weren't tasked to be able to gear up for this thing, but the things they could do, they were willing to do, or we could have went to a consultant. So we found the cost savings in certain things that we offered the chamber to do. And if they wanted to do it, they could. And if they didn't want to do it was a discounted price, by the way. They didn't have to do it. We would find somebody else. And I'll tell you that the last consultant cost us $75,000. The retail consultant. And do you know what they told us? They told us there was a beautiful view of the bay from Beach Park Plaza. Does anybody live by Beach Park Plaza? Can you see the water from Beach Park Plaza? You can't see the water from Beach Park Plaza unless it reflects off a plane. So I asked him that question. I said, did you see the water? He said, yes. I said, were you sitting on a trailer? Because you can't. So my position was really simple, Mark. I wanted somebody who knew the city, if we could find them, to be engaged in the city. Why would we go to get a kid behind a computer that graduated Stanford last week and was researching on the internet to tell us about the view from the water?
Thank you. You know, the most disappointing thing I think I've heard anybody say all night is that Foster City's not going to launch a moonshot. But I guess it leads to the question, what should Foster City be? And that's sort of the essential question the Economic Development Plan asked. We all know what it was started off to be. It wasn't intended to have a lot of commercial or retail. Certainly wasn't intended to have a lot of office buildings. All that has changed. Some of the problems the city's facing now are a result of that. People are frustrated because they need to leave town to do a lot of the things that they'd like to do at the retail level. You have a lot of people in commuting, have a lot of people out commuting. So let me ask you your vision of this, the elements of this economic development plan. Which one is the part that excites you the most, that makes you think this is what Foster City ought to be next? That this is what I'm going to work as a council member to see happen in Foster City. Now, I've been picking you in order. I'd like somebody to just decide they're going to be the first one to answer that question, and then I'll call on other people. Who's going to go first? Well,
I'll defer to anyone else, but does it surprise you?
no, it doesn't surprise me. Go ahead.
No one? Okay. Can I?
Yeah, please
Thanks.
sit down, though, please. You can be tired just watching. I know you're in great shape, but it makes me tired of watching.
Not in as good shape as I used to be. I sit in a lot of chairs for a lot of hours. And I apologize for standing up. It's just my nature.
I understand.
So the one that excites me the most is the part that talks about property. Because what it was intended to do was increase your property value. Because let's talk about economics. If you understand economics, property value means more taxes means more money to the city. And as was said before, a significant part of our infrastructure is funded by property tax. So the better we can make our property, the more money we have to do things. So the aspects I talked about that were important to me. The land use conversation. So I voted against the land use plan. Why? Because hypothetically, there was a council meeting where we talked about it. We said, well, we're going to build these 430 units. Wink, wink. We're not really going to build them. Wink, wink. But we're supposed to. Wink, wink. And by the way, we'll get transportation money from Samtrans and everybody else under one of the state bills.
No wink.
No wink. I'm assuming that you fully expect us to build 430 units on 4 properties in this city. Do you expect us to build it? Can I ask you a question?
You sure? If you accept I don't know as an answer. Okay.
So if you don't expect us to build this, then I'll wink, wink with you. So I couldn't wink, wink on that because that's not responsible governance. I've heard from you, no more development. Right? So here's what I've called for. I've spoken to Kevin Miller, assuming hopefully that I get reelected. And regardless of whether I'm reelected or not, it needs to happen in January. In January, we have this policy meeting. I want the first topic of discussion to be the creation of roundtables with you, with developers, with housing people, with people that are going to have a conversation with you about the future of Foster City and its land use. I've come up with a creative idea for Edgewater Plaza. How many people use the boardwalk here? Anybody? You like the boardwalk? You don't like it in its current shape. Do you like it enough to buy it and make it a park? Do you like it enough to make it a boardwalk that could have boat docks and be owned by the city? Okay. Hold on. I know there's one that does. But the kind of conversations that we have to have are the kind of conversations where we look at land use, what's its best and highest use, and what is it that you want. You like the boardwalk and you'd like it to be clean, and you'd like it to be new, and you'd like the property owner to fix it. Correct. You'd like Charter Square to be vital again, wouldn't you? And if it were vital, it would increase our property tax rolls.
Okay, let's not turn this into a Herb Perez revival meeting.
I'm excited about the conversation.
I understand that, but we need to give other people a chance.
I'll try to tone down.
Patrick.
Yeah, I brought up that same issue about the expansion on the housings, the additional 464 or 484 housing. We have to look at alternatives. Maybe we're going to look at a little bit higher density, maybe smaller units. San Francisco is looking at that same aspect too. Housing is so expensive right now. Building affordable housing is going to make it difficult to where we're going to put it. Where are we going to put it? Herb's got a good point. Where are we going to put that? The state had a teeth behind nothing, and they had an affordable housing policy. And that affordable housing policy said that we had to have a certain percentage, whether it's 15% or 20% housing. Now the economic times are good with the state, and I think they're going to put their teeth into it. So we have to face the facts. We have to look at a mixed-use situation. We've got to find more alternatives for housing, more for workforce housing. One of my campaign statements out there is workforce housing is real important. We need to develop. We have too much traffic. We have more people coming into this town because they're work situations. We have approximately about as many people coming into the city as leaving the city in the morning too. So we got to figure some alternatives for housing, whether that is campus housing. You know, some of the universities, whether it's Stanford, have campus housing. We have to look at alternatives that are a little bit out of the way you normally think. You might say not in my backyard, but this is their community too. The police, the fires, the teachers, the people that work at the banks. So we've got to look at all economic development in a different fashion, in a different light, because there is changes that we need to make now.
Thank you. Catherine, Sam?
Yes, I believe we need to get creative. We have the housing that is being built now. It's being built. There's nothing else we can do about it. So we do need to get creative with the ideas for economic development in the area. Maybe one of those is a new business coming in, if they could say that they would maybe hire the people from Foster City for their businesses. They would give priority to Foster City residents. There are a lot of ideas that I've been hearing floating around out there on how to handle the housing. But right now, we need to make sure that our infrastructure can support any housing that we might have there. We need to look at the traffic. We need to look at the schools. We need to look at all of the infrastructure, wastewater plant, levees. All of this needs to be done. And we need to decide, can we fix the infrastructure before we have more housing out there? So that's
So is that what jumped out at you from the economic development plan as the first thing is the basics of the infrastructure?
Right.
Okay. Sam?
Well, my vision on the economic development strategic plan is we really need to have a plan to promote and grow the economic and business resources in Foster City. At the same time, by ensuring that our parks and open space are protected, our infrastructure is maintained, and our city has the best emergency services available. These are important things. Our schools remain among the best in the region. It is really about striking a balance. How do we develop? How do we explore the resources that we have? How do we attract businesses to our city? And if we do attract businesses to our city, are we providing them the amenities needed? Are we diversifying our businesses? Are we diversifying our retail? Foster City is a unique community. We have a beautiful city. We have the lagoons. We have the parks. We need to capitalize on that. Maybe we cannot compete with Burlingame or San Mateo as far as retail, but I bet you what, we can compete on restaurants. We have the best location. We could diversify our restaurants. We could diversify our services and attract not only customers from outside the city, our businesses. We have thousands of employees every day. Why are we not capitalizing on those? I want to explore ways. I want to work with the businesses, with the chamber, with everybody who is involved. How could I attract those 4,000 employees from Gilead? How could I get them to the restaurants? How could I get them to come and spend their money here? How could I find a place for them to come and hang out after hours, after they're done with their work? Now, nothing bad about San Mateo, but now they go to San Mateo. I would rather have them be here in Foster City. As a business owner, as a business owner, I spend a lot of money on marketing with the objective to bring my customer to my doorstep. And once I get them to my doorstep, then it becomes my responsibility, my employees' responsibility, how to retain them. Well, we have those customers right in our city. They come every day, thousands of them. We need to make sure that we are providing them the amenities, that they come in, and Foster City becomes their place to live, work, and play. If they don't live here, fine, let them work and play here.
The chamber will kill me for proposing this idea. But in San Francisco, one of the ways they pay for all this stuff is that they require a tax on a payroll tax to make the employees who work here and take advantage of the services to help pay for them. Anybody have a view on something like a payroll tax for some of the 4,000 employees that are coming in every day or so?
Well, I'll take that. I mean, I think if we could get them to spend their dollars here, I don't need their payroll tax. If they could come in and invest in our businesses will generate more tax for the city. They become prosperous. They become economically viable. That's good enough for me. I don't need to tax anymore.
I'm excited to what Sam says about bringing more people spending money, sales tax and stuff, but we need a plan. The unfortunate thing is we put a lot of commercial space out there, and the retailers can't afford it. We can go into Edgewater Shopping Center, and we've got vacancies all the time. So I think, first of all, in the economic development, we need to develop a plan and a theme. It has been my past experience that we have got together, but we haven't developed a theme. What's there a reason for people to stay in Foster City? Sam, you brought up a good point. We don't really have a featured restaurant that everybody wants to go to, or an entertainment place. This is a bedroom community, and we need to relook at it. We need to revisit the plan and figure out, we're a nautical theme place about water, parks. Why don't we have that and carry that down into the 15-acre site? The 15-acre site, which is Foster's Town, is going to be nice, but we're going to have 35,000 square feet of commercial space. I don't want to see what happened in the next economic downturns that we have vacant buildings. I agree with the partnership that we did, but let's get real. 5 or 10 years down the road, the economy is going to change. We got to have a plan now. There is no plan in place. I don't believe so. I agree that Sam is right, but we need to develop a plan. If it's getting a fancy restaurant, or if it's getting the high-end Starbucks, if it's getting wireless, let's get a plan together, because otherwise it's just going to be the same thing all over again. We don't have a plan.
Thank you, Pat.
So I'll respond to that as well. But let me say something first. The idea that a corporation could go to Foster City to hire workers is not a great idea, because we have highly specialized companies here. We're talking about Gilead. People don't move to Foster City hoping to get a job at Gilead. People move to Foster City once they get a job at Gilead. People move to Foster City because you're driving up the peninsula and it's closer than San Francisco. With regard to your point, whether or not we should tax businesses, I agree with Sam in part that if you get them to shop locally, you don't need their tax. In fact, my business left San Francisco because it was such an arduous process of taxation that I chose to come to Foster City and join here and build a business based on families. Finally, we do have a plan, and it talks about some of the things that everybody's talking about, but you need to change the verbiage. Retail, repeat after me, is dead. Retail is Amazon. If you shop on Amazon for anything, raise your hand. Thank you. I don't need a $75,000 consultant to tell me that. My children tell me that every day. Daddy, I'd like a little pony. Thank you, May. Here it is, your stuffed pony for $7, and it's free shipping if you're Amazon Prime. That's what retail is. Let me tell you what we need in Foster City, because I'm in that business. Services. We need restaurants that people want to eat at. We need things that you enjoy, nail salons. We need things that you want. Coffee shops like Penelope's. Plug for Penelope's, are you here? Have you been to Penelope's? Great coffee. If you go to Penelope's on a day-to-day basis, what you see is a local Foster City resident who opened his business and is successful because of word of mouth. He met me at Starbucks, of all places, and now it's become City Hall West. You want to find any council member? Go to Penelope's any morning, you'll find us. Including me and the mayor having a conversation every Friday morning at 7 a.m. for 2 hours. What we all need to understand and grasp is, lose the retail concept. We're not going to compete with Amazon. We're not going to compete with Palo Alto. That's called window shopping. That's why Earthly Treasures, if you've ever shopped at Earthly Treasures, raise your hand. Sad. That's called the economy. But if you've eaten at Chevy's, cooking Papa's, Turtle Bay, that's Foster City.
Okay.
And that's what we need to bring back.
Catherine, I didn't get to you on the payroll question and this whole general topic.
Well, I agree with Sam, but I think we do need restaurants to bring in people. I was talking to some people last weekend, and one thing that I noticed is missing is some kind of a hangout place for younger people as well. So we need restaurants. We need a place where people can go and have a party. We need bars. We need all of this in order to revitalize some of the neighborhood areas like Charter Square, Edgewater. If we had some place like it was a destination for a restaurant, nice restaurant, I think that would add a lot of vitality to the area. So.
Now the question is, how do you, everybody wants a nice restaurant, right? How do you get one to show up here? I live in Redwood City, used to be known as Deadwood City. They did a huge revitalization of their downtown with the courthouse square, and now the businesses are coming. And because they're going to have residences downtown, the retail is also coming. So how do you go about that, Herb?
So, and this is actually, can I stand up again? No, I'll sit. So this is a great topic. So this year, I went and I met with Burlingame, because I have a business in Burlingame. So whether you realize it or not, that creation of that beautiful street, business improvement district. Each owner of the property participated in a parcel tax that enabled them to revitalize that street. And guess what street didn't get revitalized? Broadway, because the business owners refused to participate. San Carlos, Laurel Street, business improvement district. So if you're serious about revitalizing the community and you want a restaurant here, what I've done, and I know Councilmember Berninsky has done, when I see a good restaurant, we eat at it. And we tell our friends. I shop locally. I eat locally. The only place I go to Whole Foods, I apologize. But if you shop locally and you tell people, we've courted restaurants. There's a fantastic restaurant in
let me interrupt.
Oh, sorry.
Shopping at going to a restaurant is a practice, it's not a policy.
Correct.
As a council member, how do you get the restaurants to show up in the first place?
So going back to, we've tasked Kevin Miller to go out to the businesses and meet with our business community. So he has started with the large employers. He met with Gilead the other week. He met with Biomed, which is the new Illumina project coming through. And he's met with each of them on a monthly basis. He's made that determination. The next level is meeting with the owners of the establishments, the commercial developments. So I'm going to tell you from practical purposes, I've met with Sonny Tong, the property manager. So the idea that he was going to sell Charter Square to the school district, he had no intention of selling it. He said it in the newspaper. He sees that as housing. He doesn't want any retail there. Whether it's the right place for retail or not is a land use conversation. The next level of the economic development plan was looking at the land use and then creating things that would ensure that it was successful. We can't force a restaurant to come here, but rest assured we've reached out to them. Pasta in San Mateo was the example I was giving to you. It's a fantastic small restaurant on, I think it's 4th across from Drager's. Oh my God, what fantastic sauce. You want to have a great meal in the middle of the day quickly? Have you been?
No, I'm just...
All right,
I think some of these restaurants love the fact that you're talking about it.
I don't go there often.
Yeah.
I went there and I said to the owner, would you consider coming to Foster City, where Specialties is now? I said, our city's easy. Come in. We have the lowest price of entry for a business. In Burlingame, if you want to enter business, it's $5,000 to apply, and maybe you'll be told no. In Foster City, it's $110. Did you know that? $110.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about what a city council is supposed to do to make this a better environment for restaurants and for Sam?
Mark, I have a first-hand experience on this. 2 weeks ago, I've convened the Business Leadership Council. We had the top 25 companies by business, by number of employees, and by sales tax generator. And I listened to them. to find out what can we do to help them. What can we do as a city to make them prosper, to make them more viable? And the most common theme that we heard, two things. One was the city lacks a vision today. Second, the city is not as business friendly as it might think it is. A lot of businesses said we could do better. They're looking for a relationship with the city that could work in transparent way, to where there is a guideline, a process, if you will. If I need to apply for a development, there should be a process. You put your application, 30 days later, it is issued and you're done with it. This is not what's happening. I heard this complaint over and over and over from different people trying to do projects that will contribute to the economic vitality of the community. But unfortunately, they run through obstacles over and over and over again. This is not acceptable. How can we attract these kind of businesses if we put the roadblocks in front of them? We need to make sure, yes, we have rules, we have regulation that we need to follow. Another thing I have, how could we attract good restaurants if we do not force our shopping centers to stay, to be upkept? You drive now into Edgewater Plaza. It's disgraceful. I had spoken with people at large employers. They had the opportunity to come out and eat at Edgewater Plaza. I said, what a great place, great food, but what a dump. At the same time. So that is not acceptable. This is not Foster City. We need to make sure if we have codes that we enforce them. If we don't, I will work hard to put those codes on the book.
Thank you. Patrick.
You know, I concur with what Sam's saying, but I think we have to pull back with reality. It's business. The rents are very expensive commercially in here, and if you have a restaurant where 99% of the restaurants fail, you have to give some kind of incentive. You've got to have a reasonable rent. Something's going to have to be negotiated much better with the landlords and with the commercial space to give that incentive for that restaurant to stay here. Because if you take a look at Foster City, we are mostly fast food. We really don't have any major restaurants knocking at our door. I'm very excited about the opportunity to see them come. But as you notice, we've talked before, what kind of incentives can we give them? I don't concur with Sam on the issue that it's cumbersome to get a permit or do something. They're just not coming here. I mean, you're not getting your major restaurants because they can't make enough money based on the amount of traffic they've got there. I've discussed or argued many times, we need a plan or a theme. Give them a reason to come to Foster's Landing, a downtown plan. If that's a restaurant, or that, excuse my voice here, we need some reason why they want to spend their money. Okay? Thanks, Herb. So when we take a look at the economic development end of it, we've got to develop a plan to get those major restaurants to come here because they're not going to make enough money to survive based on the current rents.
Catherine.
I was talking to, thank you, Stuart. I was talking to a citizen out in the Connect 5 event, and one of the issues that they're having, they were going to put a nice gourmet restaurant down in the Ceres Regis project. The Ceres Regis project now wants to possibly, there's talk about putting townhouses there instead of retail. So they've come along midway through their plans, but they had to drop them because of that. Now, it seems like the city council that we can do something to kind of alleviate that problem where plans are switched in the middle of the road like that. Because that, when a business plans something, there's a lot of money spent on that planning. And it doesn't give us a good light if we're switching in midstream. So.
Sam.
Well, I would like to respond to Patrick. The story I told you is a first-hand knowledge. I'm not making it up. And I heard it from at least 2 developers or 2 business owners who are developing a project. This is real. And there's nothing wrong with us acknowledging that we have a problem or the system is not perfect. We need to work on it to make it better. That's all I'm saying.
So let me help a little bit. So there was a culture change in the organization. So we have a new city manager. His name is Kevin Miller, a longtime person in this community through Park and Recs. You like the parks? Greatest parks. That's because of Kevin. That's Kevin's leadership. So Kevin, when he has a problem, Kevin goes out, he's aware of the problems when there's people that go through a process that they feel is arbitrary. Second, there's a new company trying to come here. We're incentivizing them to come. We're working on a deal which would bring significant revenue to this community. And I'm not talking about $10, $10,000, $100. I'm talking about $1 million in lost tax revenue because they would maintain their sales offices here as a result of this agreement. And it's coming up into front of the council, so I want you to come and watch. There's going to be significant impact to the community. There's going to be significant impact to the revenue, and you need to chime in on this idea. With regard to rents, I rent in 5, now 6 communities. So let me tell you the reality. Foster City has the cheapest rents for commercial space. If I want a space in Palo Alto, it is $6 to $12 a square foot. In Foster City, if it's in Charter Square, it's free. If it's in Edgewater Plaza, it's $2 to $3. And they're giving long-term leases. I know because that's what they're doing. Charter Square is different. The owner is making a decision not to make it vital. By the way, I'm not sure what Edgewater Plaza people are going to. Edgewater Plaza is full. There's a dry cleaner that you can't occupy because they're going through phase 1. And next door, they're going through phase 1. So those 2 spaces are vacant. The other spaces are available at $2 to $3. If you have a business and an idea, come down, get your $110 permit from the city, have at it. So that's the reality of what's going on here in the community. With regard to can we do a better job, Sam's absolutely right. And I hear these horror stories where people feel it's arbitrary. So the very first phone call I make is to Kevin Miller. The second phone call he makes is to Curtis Banks. And then we sit down and we have coffee and we talk about it. Last week, there was a problem in one of our shopping centers. Both Kevin and Curtis came down and met with the person to solve his problem. This was never done before. They personally came out of their office, imagine, got in their car, drove down to a long-established member of our community, Barbara Rhea. Do you know Terry? Did you get your hair cut there? Anybody? Yeah. So we're working on a sign issue for Terry. I can't vote on it, it's not before me, but I can certainly advocate for him. Anytime a business owner has a problem in this community, what a council member's responsibility is to be a liaison. Okay. And that's what we do.
Thank you. You know, at the rate you're going, you're going to make some businesses mad because you're not mentioning them.
How much more time we have?
About 40 minutes.
Oh, I got time.
Yeah. In one of the comments earlier, we referenced Foster City as a bedroom community. Certainly that's what it was originally intended to be, is less so, I suppose, than it was, but we haven't talked about housing directly. I was at a Palo Alto City Council meeting the other night where somebody was wearing an elephant head because they wanted to talk about the elephant in the room. They sat there for the whole council meeting with that thing on. Bob Cushman in the Daily Journal, Foster City Residents for Responsible Development, said anytime they approve housing or indicate that they might approve housing, they're making traffic, school crowding, and our water supply problem worse. Encouraging development seems to me to really violate what the residents are clearly telling the council. On the other hand, since 2000, only 3,300 housing units have been added to the city. Everybody who's lived here long enough knows we have a housing problem. I don't know how many of you feel like it's one of those SAT questions of what doesn't belong in my neighborhood. And the answer is me, because I bought my house in 1980, I couldn't buy it now. It's a huge problem, and it's a generational problem because a lot of our children may not be able to live in this community unless we leave them our multi-million-dollar homes. What does Foster City have to do about housing? Is it going to have to build housing? Does it have to do this? Sam, why don't you start?
Well, do we need housing? It all starts really with our plan. We need to plan the community. T.J. Foster had a plan. It worked for 40 years. It is time to revisit that and find out what do we want to do. This is a discussion that we need to have. We need to reach out to the community. Everybody's input is important, and you need to make your voice heard. What do you want to see in Foster City? You know, I have attended a lot of meetings on the housing issue. I was present when the Edgewater Plaza came in. I was present when the Charter Square came in. And the people made their voice pretty loud and clear. They don't want any housing at this point. But you know, we need to figure out, we are having a housing problem in all San Mateo County. Can Foster City solve it? No, we cannot solve San Mateo County's housing problem. But there are projects that are important to the city. Case in point, the Foster Square, that 15-acre. That is a project that is geared towards our senior citizens. Those people who are the pioneers who came into Foster City in the late 60s, early 70s, they helped build this community that we all enjoy today. This is an option for these folks that they want to downsize and they still want to live in Foster City and still be among their neighbors and their kids. That is a great project. So it's not all housing is bad. It's not all housing is good. We have to really strike a balance between what we need and how can we maintain and protect our quality of life. To me, that is a litmus test. Can we do a project and maintain our quality of life? What does that mean? It means, do we have enough schools that we could absorb that growth? It means, do we have the infrastructure to bear that? It means, do we have the emergency services available for those? If that is the case, then a project might be a good project. But again, we cannot look at it in vacuum. We really have to look at a global view for the whole city.
Catherine.
My view on the housing issue is everything that is being built is going to be built. We can't do anything about what was done in the past, so we need to look to the future. We need a vision for the next 10 to 15 years. A little bit of a long term, but short, not as long as 20 or 30 years, because things change so often. So I would say no more new projects until we assess our infrastructure, until we can make sure that our infrastructure can support the people that we're looking at putting into the city. Mm-hmm. When the seniors move into those senior housing, they're going to be either selling their house, or new people are going to be moving in. So it's an ever-changing process, but I think we need to look at our infrastructure and make sure that we can handle what we've got going now before we do anything.
Does everybody agree with that? No more new projects? Should there be a moratorium? Should there be a moratorium on new housing in Foster City once everything in the pipeline is built out?
Well, let's answer the question a little bit more directly. First of all, I think the people have spoken that they don't want any more housing, quote, or big developments now. So I think the people spoke. That's clear. But your question, Mark, to begin with, was about housing. We've got to start thinking, I think Catherine kind of touched on it, on alternative housing. The reality is maybe Gilead's or maybe Nexus or whatever could maybe develop some type of campus housing. We've got to have some kind of alternative housing. Most investors today are not buying Charter Square to build condos and townhouses. The cost of real estate is so expensive right now, they'd rather build apartment buildings. The young people that are buying today are not buying homes. What they're doing is they're moving into high-end apartments. I sold 44 units near Stanford University last year. And what that gentleman did was not turn it into condos. He revised the apartments because the rents are greater than selling the property for development. So we have to look at, if you take a look at Charter Square, let's do the numbers real quick. They're talking $5 million value per acre. Do the math. If somebody wanted to develop it, they're going to go broke, unless they're going to be able to sell every unit for $2 million. So when we look at it, planning, we're talking about housing. We've got to have, Sam is right, we're all for senior housing. What about the teacher? What about the fireman? What about the person who works at Wells Fargo Bank? We've got to figure some alternatives or partnerships with business that foster that people can stay here. Why do we have the gridlock on the roads? It's simple. They don't live here. They live in Manteca. They live in Tracy. So if you want to get that traffic under control, we have to start looking at alternative ways. We have to start thinking outside of the box. The buzzwords of senior housing, that's wonderful. We are developing senior housing. We do build affordable housing, but it's not going to make the stock to take care of the environment. And the quality of life is real important to us all here. So if we're going to continue to have, we had a population in 94 of 27,000. Today we have between 31 and 32,000. That's a lot more impact on our police and fire. We need to look outside of the box and come with better solutions than we're talking about.
Thank you. Herb.
So let me unpack this a little for everyone. With regard to the developments in the pipeline, this council had nothing to do with it. We inherited 1,000 units of housing. Some good, some good, some maybe not good. But I don't question that council. That council was in a time and a place when they thought it was a wise thing to do so, respectfully for them. I don't question their decision. I can question the decision moving forward. So as an elected official, first and foremost, you represent the people. At the point where you can no longer represent the people, you need to help them understand why you can't. And if you can't convince them, you need to vote the way they want you to vote. And if you can't do that, then please do one thing for me if you get elected. Vote the way you want to vote and resign the next day. Because if you can't represent the people, I'm going to get to the question. So here's
going to vote for housing?
On housing, right now we've heard from the community that they want to wait until the housing in the pipeline is developed. I can give you some facts, though. The infrastructure with regard to water, public safety, we've increased salaries for public safety. Every time chief comes to us for a new officer, we say yes. We've consolidated our services with the surrounding communities for fire, we say yes. We made a huge savings so we can say yes. So we have enough police, we have enough fire. You knock on that door, they'll be there in 2 minutes. However, when it comes to the type of housing, that's an interesting conversation. So I spoke to a gentleman that is one of the district directors for Senator and one of the district directors for the Assemblyman. He said, would people accept housing that was for teachers, fire? Would you like to have your fire professionals living in your town? And if you could create housing that would enable that, it would still take a burden from the housing. Well, I don't know what that conversation is, but that's why in January, the conversation that I want to have is with the community. Sam and I both attended something called the Leadership Council, which was created by Senator Hill, then Assembly Member Hill, where they talk about this concept. It's called smart growth. Doesn't mean you have to accept it, but smart growth is Whole Foods with apartments on top. Doesn't mean you have to love it. May not be Foster City. So Foster City as a community has to understand it needs to address this issue. And you can say no. Or you can say yes to teacher housing. Or you can say no. You can say yes to fire. I don't know what the answer is. And the reason is, unlike councils past, I want your voice at a table with all of us.
So it sounds like what you're saying is, because the question I asked is, should we put an absolute moratorium on any new housing? And you're saying we need to be open about whether or not it makes sense to do something besides a moratorium.
No, that's not what I said. What I said was, at this point, and I apologize, and
That's all right.
this may be that part where people think I'm contentious, but what I meant to say, hopefully I said, was at this point, like Catherine said, people have told us no more till this is developed, and I agree with that.
Okay.
The ability to put a moratorium and remove it is quickly done. So those of you that are out there calling for moratorium, understand the council can put one, and then a week later it can undo one. So that doesn't get you. What you really need is council members committed to the process of what I'm discussing, which is, we hear you. By the way, though, I want to have a conversation about it. And then at that point, I'll still hear you and still maybe say no or say yes. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I got a direct answer on the question about a moratorium from the other three. But it sounds like you don't want to do one, but you want it to lead to a good discussion. No, you do want to do one, but you want it to lead to a good discussion about what comes next.
It seems like,
I understand
so
that.
let me be clear on
No.
my position. I have, and if you've watched the council meetings, I have voted no every time.
Okay.
Every time.
Sam.
Well, I would like to really measure the complete impact of the projects that are in the pipeline today before we move into another project. I'm open, though, to listening, to having a discussion about something else, but I'm not open to approving anything until what we have in the pipeline, that impact is measured, see how our traffic is, how our schools. Today, our schools cannot absorb any more kids. So if we cannot solve our school issue, absolutely I don't want any housing at this point. That is very important. Let's finish what we have, get the accurate measurement of the impact, and then we'll move forward.
Anybody else have any comments? Patrick?
I agree with
Oh, go
Sam.
ahead, Catherine.
I agree with Sam, and that's what I was saying when I began the conversation. no new housing until we can assess what impact it's going to have on our infrastructure and make sure that we can handle whatever we need. But I also agree with Herb, we need to get the community together and we need to listen to the community. I mean, we're here for the community, not just for our opinion. So we need to do it together with the community.
Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing in a campaign? Patrick?
You know, I think I was clear to begin with, and I don't think you caught it. I'm in support of the moratorium on any more development. But the reality is we still have another, 464, 484 units that we have to comply with the state. So we still have to do that because of our build out. That's why we have to put more units. The state came down on us and said we need to do that. But again, the discussion here is, Herb's right, we need to bring the stakeholders, meaning the residents and the homeowners, together to figure out what kind of alternative ideas we have for housing. Whether it's campus housing, we need to figure out other alternatives.
Just one point of clarity. So just so everybody understands, the council doesn't approve housing. We approve land use changes. We have a separate committee that considers if it's designated housing, they approve housing. So what Patrick is saying, the 430 units that were the affordable housing overlay on existing properties was moved forward by the council, and I was the sole dissent. So if that apartment complex comes to the council tomorrow, not to the council, but to the planning commission and says, thank you so much for the 110 additional units, which one is in the process of, we're ready. So I asked the attorney, what happens? She says, well, you can say no. I said, well, then what happens next? Because I'm fascinated by the mystery. She says, you get sued if you say no. I said, then what happens? She says, you settle and you build like they did in Palo Alto, Redwood City, Mountain View, and every other community.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about renters, apartments. Recent city staff report, typical market rate rent for a two-bedroom apartment is $3,700, which is more than I make in a day. Very low-income earners make about $50,000 a year and can afford around $1,200 a month. Would you support rent control? Patrick?
Absolutely not. Rent control does not seem to do anything but displace people. We need to, again, it goes back to the same question. We got to tackle the housing problem. We've got to make sure that we develop more alternative housing, and we work with the providers of Gilead's and Visa, wherever they are, and work well with them to figure out some structure so that the people that work in Foster City can have a reasonable place to live. It is not only impacting the people that work here, it's impacting the senior citizens too. A lot of the senior citizens, I get calls, I do property management. I manage about 40 units. I can't begin to tell you the calls that I receive about the high-end rents. You know, it's not just to displace people, it's everyone. It's senior citizens, it's the middle-income people. So the reality is, to live on the peninsula, the rents have gone up tremendously. We need to revisit the housing situation. Rent control is not the answer.
Anybody have any comment to say? Anybody here in support of rent control? Let me put it that way. No. Anybody have any further comments on the issue? Herb.
Surprised. So, you know, this used to be a blue-collar community. So 40 years ago, people that moved here were police and fire from San Francisco that moved here, raised their families. I've got some good news and some bad news. This is no longer a blue-collar community. It is what it is. It is a homogeneous community of people that now can afford houses that are upwards of $1.6 million. So the good news for you is that 40 years ago you bought that, you got it. The second thing that I see here is that people were smart and they invested their money. So they invested their money in secondary properties with the idea that they would be able to rent those properties as part of their nest egg. Which brings me to another topic, I won't talk about the senior housing. So the question is, should we interfere with that individual's ability to realize what they did as an investment strategy 40 years ago or 30 years ago? There's no doubt in my mind that we need affordable housing. The question is where and how. Does rent control solve the problem? If you were to stabilize the rents today across from Penelope's, The $3,700 apartment that you're talking about would be stabilized at $3,700, which still wouldn't put it in range for the new $15 an hour worker. And Councilmember Reninsky had this thing he did when we talked about affordable housing. We have below market rate housing. Do you know what that is? It's below market rate. It's below $3,700. Doesn't make it affordable, it makes it cheaper. So we haven't solved that problem, and nor do I believe that rent control would. And that's the challenge in our community.
Thank you. Catherine, Sam, any comment?
No comment, I'm just against rent control.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm against rent.
Should the city subsidize housing?
Should the city subsidize housing? No.
No?
I think the market really is what dictates the rate of the housing. We could subsidize. I don't think so. We're not in a business of subsidizing. But we could definitely create the opportunities to have diversity in housing that will cater to all segments of the population. We need to diversify our housing to our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, our essential workers in the city have the ability to live among us. They make us what we are today, and we need to make sure that we have that available to them.
Patrick?
You know, I think we got to start talking the reality. The police and fire have not been living here for 20 years. They can't afford it. They've decided to move out of the area so they could have a bigger house. I'm getting tired of the buzzwords police and fire. I'd love the police and fire to live here, but the reality is if they're going to have a young family, they're going to live out of the area so they can afford it. So let's get off that. Let's think about alternative housing. We need to find a solution. I don't believe that the city should be subsidizing rent, but we're talking about housing for the workforce housing. I'm in favor of seeing the city continue to work with the first-time homebuyers program. I think it's a wonderful program. But let's dovetail for a minute when the first-time homebuyer program has been out for a while. When we had a recession this last time, did you realize a lot of the cities had to end up having those properties foreclosed on? And some of those properties did not go back into the housing stock for first-time homebuyers. We need solutions. We can't just say, and I agree, no more building. This is a planned city. Let's start looking at alternative housing. High rents are not going to do anything but push people out. I rent property in Foster City. I had somebody from Google that rented a property for $5,500, which is pretty cheap. Their incomes were over $20,000 a month. They had no incentive because they couldn't afford to buy a house. Now that's making about $400,000 a year. They can't afford to buy a house. So we've got a disproportionate economy here only because we've got a lot of wealthy people coming. The young people want to rent. They don't want to buy houses out here. But we have to figure an alternative source for the people that have lived here for 30 years or 30 plus years. They want to be able to sell their house in Foster City or their condo and buy something. So we got to start thinking outside of the box a little bit because it's not rent control. It's re-looking at how we deliver housing, whether it's rental housing or whether it's affordable housing.
Thank you. Herb?
So and this is some of the stuff when you get on the council, you kind of figure out. City subsidizes housing. We had something called the RDA, which that's exactly what it did. It subsidized housing. And guess what? We're looking at nexus studies right now to subsidize housing. And the development that you complain about over there with the 660 units, you know what they did? They subsidized their own housing. The RDA funds went away. RDA, for those of you that don't know, that's redevelopment funds. Those funds are what you create affordable housing with. They said, no problem. We will create 66 units for you. We have housing that's being subsidized right now as part of a development agreement that's going to expire in 2020. So the city now is going to have to negotiate to get that back into the affordable housing. We subsidize housing all the time to get it below market rate, and that's our part. We're looking at nexus fees that when somebody builds a new development here or a new residential development, we will, in essence, tax them for their impact on the community, and we'll take that and put it into a pool of money to subsidize housing. So the question is, what part do you want to do and to what end? So we can get developers to put money into a pool that we can use to fund this housing. So with regard to the police and fire, there's no doubt in my mind. Our police and fire live in, I'm not even sure where half of them live, because when they call me, they have a phone number, area code. I don't even know where it is. I think one of them was from New York. So I think he flies in on the weekends. Joking. We have excellent staff. They're always here. But they choose to live there. The guy from Google that can't afford the house, no, he can afford the house. He just knows it's the wrong time to buy a house. If you can't afford a house in this market and you make $400,000 a year, then your Maserati needs a little more gas.
Okay. I don't have a Maserati.
Mark?
Yes, same.
Well, I just want to get back on this issue about police officers and firefighters. We do have some police officers who live in Foster City. I know them firsthand. Joe is one of them. The other ones who don't live in here, they choose not to. But our police force is well compensated, and I think they can afford Foster City if they wanted to. But my point was, is really we need to have diversified housing to where we cater to all segments of the community. Teachers. These are the people who are raising our next generation. Do they need to travel and go spend 2 hours each way to come in and work in the Foster City? To me, that is not acceptable. We need to have diversified housing to accommodate those people.
Sam, I love you, and you know that. But I'm going to tell you right now that our $90,000 a year police officer, unless he bought 40 years ago, and unless his wife's a brain surgeon, he cannot afford to live in this Foster City. And so I love you, but that's just reality. Chief Martell lives here.
Let me ask this. The best example I can think of workforce housing in this county is what's been done by the community colleges.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
they took their own property
Absolutely.
and basically put together a program in which the teachers are subsidized to some degree
Sure.
while they develop enough income to go out and buy themselves. Is there an opportunity for Foster City to do that, and where would it be, and how would it work? Patrick?
I've been talking about that all the way along. That's what I've been telling you.
Well, I know you say think out of the box, but it's time to get specific now.
Well,
know
why
what
don't
they
we
did-
work? Why don't we work with your Visa, your Gileads, your campus? Stanford University, they have campus housing. They did that a long time ago.
Well, they were called dorms.
Dorms, but they do have. No. I'm going to correct you on that, Mark. I'm going to correct you on that. I won't take that because we do have housing at Stanford for professors. Do you think the average professor could afford to live out here? I don't think so. And Sam, I agree with you, and I think Herb is well taken. There's very few police and fire, if they haven't retired, that can afford to live here in Foster City. I agree with you on the teachers, but let's get real. The teachers only make maybe $50,000, $60,000 a year. That means, for qualifying for an apartment, maybe for $2,500 is maybe all they can qualify. I'm in the field of real estate. I see people inside and out. And Herb, your comment, I agree with the Google people, but the reality is they don't have any tax breaks. So if they're making $40,000 a month, over 50% of that money is going to federal and state taxes. Do they have a savings account? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're right, Herb. They're waiting for the market to go down. So I think we've got to look at alternative housing.
Of course, if they're working at Google, they're saving a huge amount of money because they never have to buy lunch.
That's right. They can live in their parking lot.
So I'm going to try to address your question, and what I mean by that is the city owns certain parcels here. So one of the things that I've asked for, because the lease is coming up, and it was a point when this thing was very vital. I'm not saying that I have an opinion on it one way or the other, but if you wanted to create this type of housing, this is not a new concept. So I travel a lot I've been to a lot of countries. In Korea, they have the concept you're talking about, and they call it key money. They literally take money and they put it into an apartment so the person in the apartment has 5 years. They have 5 years to save up enough money to buy a homestead. And in Korea, the houses are much like Foster City. The idea of this type of housing where you give people 5 years to save a homestead amount of money is a great idea. If you're asking me where it could occur, quite frankly, there's only one place it could occur. We have 2 or 3 choices. The one place that we control, we have 26 acres of a golf course that revenue-wise, let me just tell you the number, we receive $30,000 a month. So $30,000 a month is what we receive from 26 acres of real estate. Now, I don't know much about investment. I'm a small businessman, but I can tell you that my rent is 2/3 of that for 5,000 square feet in Edgewater Plaza. So I think we can do better with that. And if you ask me, if you wanted to make that change and create this sort of housing where people could get a homestead and have time to do it, and after 5 years, just like they do at the college, I think that's an excellent idea. Whether or not the community wants it, We have a lot of golf courses, and quite frankly, we have a lot of better golf courses. So that's a discussion as a matter of policy and land use that's interesting, but that's a creative solution for a problem that exists, and a willingness for the community to place housing out by the water with the least impact to traffic on 3rd. And let's talk just, can I have 2 seconds for traffic? Just 2.
Yeah, go.
We don't have a traffic problem in Foster City proper. We have a problem getting in and out of Foster City.
Right.
We have a problem because 92 and 101 were designed by people in different rooms on different parts of the planet. That obviously didn't, because I'm from the East Coast originally, where when you get off over here, and the guy gets on over there. This idea where you get off here, he's trying to get on over here, he's going to 92, you're going over here, you're going to 101, you want to go to Foster City. Doesn't matter what time of day you go, that doesn't work. Now with the new housing in San Mateo, Hillsdale's going to close down. Okay. New development on 3rd, it's going to close down. So enjoy Foster City.
I didn't get, obviously traffic was one of the things on my list of issues to talk about, but I opted not to do that because it struck me that it's really the product of every other problem. The housing problem, business development, the future of the city. You know, if you solve some of those problems, the traffic problem, maybe it gets better, maybe it doesn't, but a huge amount of it is also regional. And so how much of it you can actually impact, how much you can impact a state highway like 92, I don't know. We were talking about workforce housing, as I recall. Did you want to say something, Sam?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Catherine?
Well, I just wanted to say this is the type of conversation that we need to have.
Sure.
And we need to have it with the citizens because we can come up with these creative ideas. And you'd be surprised how many good ideas there are out there. So I think, you know, we're talking about nexus fees, we're talking about workforce housing, affordable housing. We need creative solutions, and that's what we need to do. And we need to work as a team with the citizens in order to find them.
We are we are near the end of our evening. We're going to ask each of the candidates now in reverse order to take about 2 minutes to sum up whatever, make whatever pitch they want to make for voting for them, and then we'll call it a night. So we start with Herb.
Are we surprised?
Well, I'm standing up now because if he tells me to sit down, see, I know. You know, I've got to be honest. Man, I'm excited. And the reason I'm excited, we did a tremendous amount of work the past 4 years. I met every Monday. Our calendar was full. During the mornings for 2 years, I met with the sustainability group. With citizens every Friday, I met to talk about the future and the challenges of the future, and you've heard them here tonight. This type of dialogue is what excites me. Whether or not we raise a business fee or a dog park, I mean, that's all interesting. That's the mundane stuff. But where we're headed for the future is what excites me. The reason I chose to rerun was because I realized the work wasn't done. I had the opportunity to work with great council members. Pam Frisella, for one, who when she writes about me says, you know, when I worked with Herb, we got along. He wasn't mean to me. And you know why that was? Pam came prepared. She was the heart of this community. And I own that relationship with her because she came prepared and taught me about service. Each council member has taught me something about service. And they've taught me a little bit about the different ways. I come from a different political background. Places I've been in, the boardrooms that I've sat in, I've managed $400 million businesses. I started my board service when I was 20 as a young Olympian. I sat in the room with minds that were way bigger than mine. I just learned to be quiet, but then I watched them. And let me tell you how they act. They're businessmen. They act. But at the end of the day, they get stuff done. And those corporations are some of the most successful people in the world. So when I came to this council, that's what I expected. I expected dialogue. I expected discourse. I expected democracy. And it was democracy. And I didn't always agree with Charlie Berninsky. And I didn't always agree with Art, and I didn't agree much sometimes with Steve, but he had some good ideas. The ability to get a good idea done is consensus building, common sense, and an idea that would work. So I'm going to tell you some ideas that got done. Smoking. It was a compromise. I wanted it banned in the entire city. I said, I will be the first. Raise your hand if you're with me. How many hands went up? Mine. That's okay. We compromised. I worked with Gary Pollard. He wanted private streets. He wanted to be able to smoke his cigar on his street in front of his house. I said, great idea. Listen, please don't smoke it in front of my house. Here. We compromised, and you now have a smoking ordinance that protects you and your children and your grandchildren. So that's why I look forward to serving. I look forward to asking for your vote again when I knock on your door. And don't forget, this Friday, we have a meet and greet at the Recreation Center, free spaghetti, and the meatball contest is on. Patrick is bringing his, I'm bringing mine. I'll invite the other two candidates. Come and enjoy some meatballs. Thank you for considering me. Thank you.
Patrick.
Well, I think I'm going to try that standing up
Well,
thing.
we're in open revolt now.
So I want to say, first of all, I appreciate the audience tonight that came out here to passionately talk about the housing crisis, the no more build crisis problem we have, and the situation we have in Foster City with the traffic. One of the other issues we did not talk is about emergency services. Herb's right, Sam's right, Catherine's right too. We only have two ways out of Foster City. If we automatically have an emergency, all of a sudden we have an overturned car vehicle. One of the trucks for the San Mateo Foster City Fire Department might be stuck. What do? We need to have an alternative plan. We talked about safety, but we didn't talk about what happens on a simple little automobile accident or something. We need to look at alternatives. I want to see the dialogue of most of you people participating. It's not just about being here at an event. Your ideas are important. No, not in my backyard makes sense. You don't want more development in your area. But we have to solve the housing crisis. We need you guys to come to the table and to give us the ideas and the guidance. I look forward to serving Foster City. Thank you.
Catherine.
Well, there's no doubt that Foster City is facing a challenging future, but I think it's an exciting future because this is a time for us to turn it around. And as your council member, I would work for you, and I would be out there meeting with the people and seeing what the people want, and I would hope we'd bring everybody together and come up with some creative solutions for some of those challenges. I'll work for you, I'll be an advocate for you, and I think with your help, we can overcome these challenges and meet the challenges, and we'll have a better Foster City. And we'll have a Foster City where we want to live, work, play, and dine. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Sam, you get the last word.
All right. Thank you, Mark, for your time. I would also like to thank the Foster City Chamber of Commerce for putting this event together. But most importantly, I would like to thank all of you who have made the time to attend this event today. You know, Mark, I have been asked, why have you decided to run for City Council? My answer is really simple. I have the demonstrated ability, the genuine passion, and the experience to be your council member. I have spent these last 2 years I put the time to attend all vital city meetings, including City Council, the Planning Commission, School Board. I have established relationship. I have talked to all the businesses, large and small in the city. Not all of them, but I've talked to business in the city, large and small, to understand their challenges, to better understand their challenges. I am committed to this Foster City that we all love. I will work hard. Integrity and goodwill, these are the principles that will guide me on the council. I always look for your input. This is about community. We all need to come together. I look forward to having your vote this November 3rd. I am honored to have the support of current and past leaders of this community. You can learn more about me by visiting my website, samhindy4citycouncil.com. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the Chamber. I want to thank Crown Plaza for a great event. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank Peninsula TV. This will be on their station over time. And I'll put a plug in. Kevin Mullen and I will be co-hosting a live election night show. Well, this is one of the races we'll cover. You know, the 19th century humorist, Mr. Dooley, once said, politics ain't beanbag. It takes a lot to run for office. It's a lot of hard work. I tried to make it as hard on them as I could tonight. If I didn't get to the questions you wanted, you can ask these people. Doesn't have to be the last campaign event that you participate in. But I want you to join me in showing your appreciation for them making democracy happen, for doing the work. Thank them all.